With the fall of the Greek defense at Thermopylae and the withdrawal of the Greek fleet at Artemisium, everything was clear for the Persian forces' advancement. The Persians marched towards Athens, sacking and burning everything along the way, even the most remotest of hamlets. The Greek fleet evacuated anyone that would leave south and stationed themselves at the island of Salamis. The Spartan naval commander Eurybiades held a council of war at Salamis, where they began determining what they should do. Many captains suggested it would be best to leave the island and Attica to the Persians in favor of guarding the Isthmus, for if the Greek fleet should fall, the Persians could land anywhere in the Peloponnese. The Persians arrived at Athens and found the city empty, except the citadel, which was boarded up with wood by the Athenians who refused to leave their home. The Persians stood upon Mars's hill and began the siege of the citadel, and attacked the Greeks in barricades with arrows, and the Greeks refused all surrender that was brought upon them. As the Persians approached the gates, the Greeks dropped huge masses of stone on them. Xerxes was perplexed, unsure how to stop them. The Persians then made a discovery, and found a supposedly unclimbable wall that was unmanned, and they began climbing. As soon as the Athenians saw the Persians on the citadel, some threw themselves from their wall and perished, while others fled to the inner part of the temple. The Persians inside opened the gates, allowing the rest in, and massacred the defenders. They then plundered the temple and burned it down. Meanwhile, at Salamis, the Greeks heard what happened at Athens, and some captains were alarmed and fled the island, not waiting for the council to come to a vote. The rest who stayed came to a vote that the fleet would battle at the Isthmus. At night, the captains boarded their ships, but Themistocles realized that by abandoning Athens, all was lost, and nothing would stop the captains from deserting, as each would flee to protect their own land. Themistocles decided to hold another council, where he proclaimed that they had to make a stand at the Straights of Salamis, and gave many reasons why. One reason was because there was open sea at the Isthmus, and they would be battling the entire Persian navy at once. But his main argument, his trump card, was if they abandoned Salamis, nothing would stop the Athenian fleet from fleeing to a friendly city instead of losing their lives to save Spartan soil. Without the Athenians, the Greek fleet would diminish over 50%, and Athenian sailors were better trained. Even with those reasons, some Greeks protested, claiming that Themistocles had no city anymore, so he should be silent. But Eurybiades believed that Themistocles had a good argument and backed him. Only then did the other captains agree to fight at Salamis. Meanwhile, Xerxes sent Mardonius to meet with his fleet's captains on whether or not they should attack the Greek fleet. All advised to attack the Greeks, except only Artemisia, who claimed they accomplished what they came for, and their island couldn't support the population forever, would eventually surrender. Xerxes was pleased with her answer, but nevertheless, he took advice from the greater number and bid them attack the Greeks. He believed the fleet didn't do its best at Artemisium because he wasn't there to see, but this time he would be a witness to the combat. Xerxes had a throne built on a mountain overlooking the straits, so he could take note of who performed the best to give rewards. By the time they set sail and took up their stations, night had fallen, and they prepared to engage the following day. The Greeks were in distress, and the Peloponnese were troubled that they had been kept to fight at Salamis on behalf of the Athenian territory, and feared that if they lost, their own country would be left unprotected. Themistocles heard what was going on, and secretly sent a slave to deliver a message to the Persian fleet. The message stated that Themistocles wanted the Persians to win, and said that the Greeks are about to flee. Themistocles did this because he didn't want the Peloponnese to leave, and wanted the Persians to prevent them from leaving by beginning the battle early. This was also bait to get the Persians into the straits, instead of the Persians waiting for the Greeks to come to them in open waters. The Persian captains believed the messenger, and sent their western wing of warships around Salamis to enclose the Greeks, while sending most of their fleet to the wider channel on the eastern side. All these moves were made in silence during the night. They searched the straits for the Greeks who were supposed to be retreating. The Greeks didn't know they were being surrounded, and assumed the Persians were in the same place as the night before. Soon, an Athenian from Aegina crossed over and announced that the Greeks were encircled and cannot retreat. The captains at first didn't believe him, until a trireme that deserted from the Persians arrived with the same story. There was now no option left but to fight. Before we get into the Battle of Salamis, let's compare the two navies. The Greek fleet consisted of 378 triremes, while the Persians had around 600 triremes. The overall strategy for the Persians was to overwhelm the Greeks with a massive invasion and complete the conquest of Greece in a single campaigning season. The Greeks sought to use their smaller numbers to defend restricted locations. Time was on the Greek side, as the Persians couldn't support a huge force indefinitely. The battle at Thermopylae had shown to the Persians that a frontal assault against a well-defended Greek position was useless, but they had to rely on outflanking them. The only way for the Persians to outflank the Greek army at the Isthmus was using their navy, which would require the destruction of the Greek navy, so they had to defeat them. Conversely, by the Greeks crippling the Persian naval fleet, the Greeks could thwart the invasion. The Persians had a significant tactical advantage by outnumbering the Greeks by at least 2 to 1 and having better sailing ships. The most common naval tactics were ramming and boarding. The Persians and Greeks could use the effective dike plows maneuver, but the Greeks had less maneuverable ships, so it was more difficult to pull it off. The Persians preferred to battle in open sea where they could better utilize their superior numbers, while the Greeks preferred narrow passages where larger numbers means less. Therefore, by rowing into the Straights of Salamis to attack the Greeks, the Persians were playing into the Greeks' hands. Alright, time for the famous naval Battle of Salamis. At daylight, the Persians pressed forward to attack the Greeks in the Straits. However, the Persian fleet became disorganized and cramped in the narrow waters, while the Greek fleet formed a nice orderly line that was ready to attack. However, the Greeks backed up their ships as if in fear, but this was to gain better position and allow the early morning wind to creep up. All of a sudden, a single ship shot forward to ram the nearest Persian vessel, and the two vessels became entangled and could not separate. Then, the whole Greek line followed and made straight for the disordered Persian battle line. On the left side of the battlefield, the first line of Persian ships was pushed back by the Greeks, but the Persians feared that Xerxes' eye was upon their ships, and fought the Greeks more bravely than at Artemisium. It was not enough for the Persians, as one of their admirals was killed early in battle, and the Persian Phoenician squadron was left disorganized and leaderless, and their vessels were pushed back against the coast. In the center of the battlefield, a wedge of Greek ships pushed through the Persian lines, splitting the fleet in two. A Persian commander attempted to board a ship, but was put down by spears and thrust into the sea. Artemisia's ship was being pursued by the same Greek ship and attempted to flee, but accidentally rammed another Persian vessel, which apparently convinced the Athenian captain that that ship was an ally or deserter, and left. The Persian ship she sank contained the king of the Calindians, and none of the crew survived. Xerxes, who was watching, thought she successfully attacked the Greek ship, and seeing the poor performance of the other captains, commented, "My men have become women, and my women men." The Persian fleet began to retreat towards Phalerum, but was ambushed by the Aeginetes as they tried to leave the straits. The remaining Persian ships limped back to the harbor of Phalerum and the shelter of the Persian army, thus ending the battle. All in all, the Persians lost 300 triremes, half their fleet, but the Greeks only lost 40 ships. Xerxes, who witnessed the carnage while sitting upon his throne, beheaded many Phoenicians because they tried to blame their loss on the Ionians. But Xerxes witnessed an Ionian ship capture an Aeginetes ship. All in all, Salamis was, for the Persians, an unnecessary battle and a strategic mistake. They should have just sailed around. Xerxes attempted to have a pontoon bridge built across the straits to use his army to attack, but with the Greek fleet patrolling the straits, it proved futile. Xerxes was worried that the Greeks may destroy his pontoon bridges he had built over the Hellespont, and decided to flee back to his empire, as he didn't want to be trapped in Europe and perish. So Xerxes left Mardonius in charge of the rest of the expedition, and fled with a large part of the army back to Persia. Mardonius thought it would be best for him to venture forward and become the conqueror of Greece, or else he would be in a bad position for persuading the king to begin the war. Mardonius picked only the elitists of the army to stay with him. We will learn more about Mardonius' campaign in the next episode. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe if you like this type of content. Thank you all for watching.